Hey, I'm Katy Spaas, and I'm a world-renowned author and speaker on high sensitivity and a retired coach to professional artists and performers. Spotlight Stress is your guide to build confidence, find your superpower, and claim your shine. What does it mean to you to go to New York at a very young age, start as a dancer, be afraid to speak in public, and then transform your life as an actress? Please, Renata, tell us. What the hell? What the hell?
How did I do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was a kid who, because of my highly sensitive, highly sensitive nature, had a hard time expressing myself except through my body. That was the way that I could channel and focus and thankfully, I always thought I was doing it in the shadows, but thanks to my mother, she noticed and sort of introduced me to dance, and that became a channel for me to use all that energy and those skills. And so I luckily was able to find a Russian ballet teacher, and so at a very young age I was studying with classical ballet and just got obsessed with it. And that's what drove me to, you know, once I finished high school, just get to New York. And yeah, so I started as a dancer. I had a scholarship. I was in dance companies, and I got an injury, and that led me to modern dance and then eventually theater. And it's just been a wild ride.
Yeah, it sure looks like one. I mean, I think that there's many artists who would envy the things you've already accomplished. I mean, you've won awards for your writing skills with your play. You've won an award for being an actress in the movie Happy Now. You've played in Jessica freaking Jones, which is really cool. So I'm just curious, what made you go from dancing to wanting to be an actress?
Well, it was sort of like stumbling into it, actually. I, because of being injured as a ballerina, I was able to explore some of the downtown theater, dance theater that was going on in New York. And I always thought of myself as a dancer, and it's like, okay, so here's some text. Why don't you say this? And I was just terrified. I was like, I can't speak. I don't speak. I speak with my body, not my voice. And eventually I thought, well, maybe if people are asking me to speak so much, I should probably take an acting class. And that's how I stumbled into it, really. And luckily, my first teacher um, understood my process, that the best way for me to approach the work was through my body, something physical. And but it took a long time for me to really share my voice and feel comfortable with my voice in a class, let alone an audition. That was a whole other level of terror for me.
I love that. You know what? In coaching, we like to use the concept of the terror barrier,
Mm,
which is, if you want to achieve something, there's always this terror barrier in between our old patterns and the new thing we want to create. And I think it's brilliant to see how you just like on your own, which is like for 2% of the population on this planet and probably beyond, that it's possible to make such deep transformations on their own. And you just did that going from one extreme to actually the other, because from being afraid of public speaking to becoming a person who is like in the flashes, in the spotlight,
yeah.
and showing yourself completely vulnerable and almost feels like, naked.
Oh, yeah.
So, how did you deal with the concept I like to talk about, spotlight stress? How did you deal with the fact that you were, inventing yourself as an actress, but then also having to deal with that pressure that is coming in from all these other corners as well?
Well, many different things. Like I did was lucky to find coaches that helped me with breathing techniques, with grounding techniques, with feeling my feet on the floor, with um, having processes that, while before you go in, and then while you go in, practicing walking in, and just, using a vision not to give your power away, or even the simple thing of like eating a banana 45 minutes before you go in helps you calm your nerves. It was all about techniques about being grounded, showing up and being present. Um, and there are several ways to do that. But when it became, when I really had, when I was starting to write my own story, I mean, in the show that I wrote, Random Acts, is, I like to call it, it's a coming of age memoir narrative combined with a dance piece.
Cool.
So, but in those beginning stages of just even telling the story, it was terrifying. And what helped me was to say, why am I doing it? Why am I doing it? I am, there's a story that I want to tell. It's a story that, that is about how an act of kindness can, ripple through your life and others around you in ways you have no idea. And so I was able to think of it as a mission or a service, or I don't know. I had a story I was trying to tell that it wasn't all about me. I was talking about something that was bigger than myself. And that also helped me with my fear, even though it still was there, of course, because as you say, you're especially doing a solo show. I mean, it was the last thing I wanted to do, believe me. But it was almost like my heart was just like, and people around me, if they hear a little bit of the story, were like, no, 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 you've got to do it. It's okay. Go, go, go. Keep going, keep going, keep going. So I did have community and support.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I don't think an artist ever does anything on their own. But the impulse to do it does come from inside. Does come, for me, from something deep within me, that I was going to do it even if I was afraid.
Yeah. I 100% understand what that feels like, because to me, I did the same for my career. And it's especially when you're putting yourself out there on a vulnerable platform or in a vulnerable way, and especially when there's people judging what you're doing. When you start out, that's something that is making the fear bigger, and that it's putting the pressure on. So I'm so happy to hear you share about the fact that you had community, you had support, and that you've got the techniques, because that's the first thing I would have, taught you if you would have been my client in the past. That's the first thing I would have taught you as well, to get grounded, to get present, being present in the moment, because the brain is so interesting. It will really try to make it something really big, really scary, and it's making this huge mountain out of it. While actually, all we have to do is take one step. And when you just make it smaller and focus on that one step, it's so much easier and lighter in the process. It's just a lot more fun without all that weight as well. You have more space and time to enjoy what you're doing instead of being worried about that mountain all the time. But it is a defense system of the brain, and it's so beautiful to see how that works. So what did you think was the best tool or tip or technique that worked for you to like really own your shine and be in the spotlight completely as yourself?
I guess a couple of things. actually. It, it was bringing my because a lot of the fear that I have, or that comes up a lot of time, is because of what I experienced as a child. I think a lot of times our programming begins, or for me, it did as a child. So one thing that I thought that I found really helpful, because like when I felt too much or felt um, really vulnerable, it's like my mother was depressed, so she didn't understand her own emotions, let alone what I was going through. So I it was unsafe. The conditioning was unsafe. So for me to say, kind of almost look at my little girl, my little Renata, and say, it's okay. I've got you now. You're okay. Let's go have some fun. Or whatever the technique to tell yourself, to bring yourself and understand that, maybe these fears are from a very deep, sort of long standing place, just to kind of lighten it up and go, hey, little Renata, it's okay. I'm here. I got you now. I'm going to breathe with you. I'm going to hold you. I'm going to listen to you. And we're going to have fun. Or whatever those words are that kind of get you, that would help me get in that present moment. Like, that's one thing. And then also just an acting teacher who I learned so much from. His name is Robert Colt. The idea of being ruthlessly real, telling my truth in whatever given moment, in these imagined circumstances, whatever that is, because telling the truth when I was growing up was not safe. So to just remind myself that your job, you're being called as an actor to be ruthlessly real, to tell your truth, because you are now safe to do so. And that's kind of a mantra. It's like, tell the truth, simply tell your truth, be ruthlessly real, and trust yourself. Trust. It's another thing, trust myself. Because for so long, I was like, because being so highly sensitive, it's like I can walk in a room and like, pick up on like, oh, the strongest emotion in the room, which is oftentimes somebody in distress. So it's like I would always be like, walk in a room, not know why I'm feeling afraid, not know why I'm suddenly like, I could walk in the room feeling just fine, and then all of a sudden like, ooh, something's wrong, and it's not even mine. And that took me a long time to understand. Being an empath, being so empathic and sensitive, it's like, oh, understanding what is mine and what is not mine was a big one, to to um, to really understand. So
What is your go-to technique that you use to feel, is this mine or is it not?
breathing.
Yes.
Take a deep breath and feel myself kind of take a step back, not physically step back, but just kind of like, oh, almost become a witness, like become a journalist, kind of like, oh, just observe, if you can, and not get in the moment, like get caught up in the energy, but just kind of step back and go, okay, what is going on? What is going on? Oh, and just watch behavior, just kind of like take a breath, step back, be a witness. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Kind of, and it's an interesting thing when I was even writing the play, because I'm writing about my life, and writing about having to create certain instances from my life, that and to be able to write it I had to go into a non-reactive place. I had to look at it from a non-judgmental perspective. And that was a really interesting technique, because by allowing myself to kind of step back and get perspective, I could step out of the story and look at it from an objective perspective. And then once I would step into it, it's like I actually had the opportunity of healing things, because, you know, as an actor, we're called to step in the shoes of people and understand the world through their perspective. And it gave me such insights, especially into parents who, you know, are like, you know, to really see them as people was such a gift and such kind of a healing thing. But I think it also can be used for just other situations where not to take things personally, right? Like, everyone's going to have their feeling and their emotions, and instead of taking it personally, it doesn't necessarily, it's not, 9 times out of 10 is nothing to do with you,
Yeah, and as HSP, which most artists are, especially, you know, in the acting industry, that's really interesting, because it's like you say, you know, it's your job to put yourself in the skin of someone else and to feel everything, which is the reason why you're so good at what you do. But on the other side, it's really hard, because that's also our life as it is a little bit. Because every time you walk in a room, even if that's your own living room and your partner is coming home, or your child is you know, overstimulated from a day at school and they're screaming and all over the place, that can be really rough on us, and it can cost a lot of energy. And the technique that you just explained is a really beautiful way and strategy to implement among so many others. But I love doing some breath work, because it's the easiest thing to do. You can do it everywhere, even while in a conversation. You know, you can just breathe slowly through your nose, in and out your stomach, and just slow down a little bit. And by doing that, you are owning your own energy. And it was interesting to me to find out that, you know, other people cannot affect my energy. You know, their energy is at a place as they want it to be, but I'm 100% in control, which I, you know, try not to be, but, you know, it's my energy.
yeah,
And if
absolutely.
if I'm judging about someone else, or if I see someone, you know, pull like a bad eye, and I start making a discussion in my mind about what they're thinking about me, and especially for people, you know, in the spotlight, it's really hard, because this happens all the time. You read a comment, you see, you know, you do an audience, you see the people in front of you, you see your audience when you're doing a play. There's so many ways where people are judging you, good or bad. And once you can define your own space and claim your own energy, it is so much easier to connect with yourself, to stay true to yourself, and to enjoy that moment, instead of losing ourselves, you know, by our thoughts. Because it's like you say, it's like probably 10% or something that is actually thinking something bad, but we are filling that in. And then more often it will be bad than good, because we tend to take things personal. We want to do a really good job. We're highly committed. And then we take things personal, which is very normal. But it's also very destructive behavior, you know, to be in those thought processes. So it's really important to take a step back by breathing and connecting with your own body and energy, and going from there, so that you don't have to feel tired all day, frustrated, or insecure like many others do. So I think that was already really, really cool. What is the thing about being in the spotlight that you love most?
That's interesting. Um, the energy, the chance to have an energy exchange, um, playing at sort of a high level. I don't know. I find it very playful. The opportunity to there's just this energy exchange and collaboration that can happen when you have the spotlight, you know.
Yeah.
And what you mentioned too, like like softening my belly is so key. I just wanted to kind of highlight that because just to stay physically like soft, you know, to be open, right, um, is very helpful. But yeah, I think of it as an exchange of love, maybe love, energy, whatever, like whatever that positive energy is to be sharing. Um, yeah, I just find it a beautiful thing.
I love that. I think that's absolutely brilliant. Just to follow up on that and ask the next question, what is the one thing that you've, maybe secretly wanted to do, but just were holding yourself back because of the spotlight?
Hmm. Um, you mean do in terms of career
It
or
can be anything. It can go from showing your true colors, from your family, from a vacation, from doing something crazy in your career,
I guess for me, because I talk a lot about my vulnerabilities in my writing, like if I'm writing a story or a memoir or something, I don't often go into that on social media, which I'm sometimes going, would that be a good thing? Maybe to do that sometimes. I know that people do that and get very personal and expose themselves very vulnerably. And I don't know. I get a little shy in that situation, right? I'm not sure exactly why. I sort of like, well, I'm talking about that over here and I'm talking about that over there. I think that may be the next step for me, like, you know, letting myself, um, my other like vulnerabilities maybe exposed in a way more publicly.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So, what would be the biggest win for you from doing this?
Um, I guess I guess having the opportunity to connect with people in a deeper way. And I understand that doing that, you always risk, you know, there are people that won't get you or like, and that's okay. You know, I've come to the point where it's like, you're not everyone is your fan. Not everyone likes you. It's okay. You know, it's, I think it's more important to be honest and true to yourself.
Yes,
And
100%. And I was wondering, to follow up on that again, what would be the biggest contribution for your audience? What would be their biggest win if you would do this? If you put yourself like really out there and show your true vulnerability and share more about the parts that we do feel shy about talking about them, or maybe we don't feel important enough to talk about them, or we think we're not interesting enough, but there's a million reasons our brain will tell us why we should not be doing that. But what do you think honestly that an audience can gain from watching that from you?
I guess, you know, and it's true, the mind plays tricks on you. It's like, oh, that nobody wants to hear about that. That's, you can, your mind can tell you all kinds of things that get in the way. And I guess to trust that the times that I have, that people have really responded strongly. And so why I'm holding back is like, okay, maybe it comes from that fear. But what would be the gain is the question, or what would be, yeah. I guess I would discover that I'm not alone in my in my uh, in my frailties and fears and vulnerabilities and stuff.
And do you think that that is the biggest win for them as well, is to find out that they're not alone, and that even people who have achieved great success and are doing the thing they absolutely love and living a brilliant life, they do experience these things as well? Is that what you think will attract? Or
Yeah, I think so.
yeah,
That, to struggle through doubts and fears and still, keep finding those ways of getting up and finding joy in the process of doing it. Yeah, it's interesting because it's been a while since I've actually been on a set, and there comes like the trick of the mind. It's like, oh my God, you're, something's wrong, and you're not good enough, and I don't know, just all this like, and just to keep doing the processes, the work, every day showing up and doing something for your career, doing something that brings you joy and brings you closer to the feeling of just doing your work, doing your job, doing your art form.
yeah. And that is definitely something you can implement in this little aspect that you're still holding back on. But it will make it easier when you have clear to yourself. It's like you said before, becoming an actress. When the mission is bigger, or the vision is bigger than the fear, or just of yourself, then it starts to get easier. You can start sharing, you can start showing yourself.
Yeah.
And you already have the tools and the techniques to cope with the fact if there would be some, because to be honest, I've had to put myself out there really vulnerable. And of course, there has been some negative feedback, but a lot less than I expected. Like really, really minimal. So I don't attract those people, and nor will you. And even if it happens, my mantra is, I'm not here for you. I'm here for my like-minded spirits.
Yes.
You've got someone else who's here for you, who resonates completely with you. But I'm here for my people, which are highly sensitive performers, artists, who feel misunderstood and who, are dying to find themselves and show their true colors and really shine their light. So that is my people. I don't care about if that resonates with someone else, because it's not who I'm here for. And I'm sure that you'll know exactly what to do, is because you've already shared like a bunch of tools that you've got to cope with that. So to be honest, I'm very excited to watch that first video soon.
You? Yes, I promise I will.
Wow, that's great. That's big commitment here. That's big commitment. Good for you. Good for you. Thank you so much for being our guest today, Renata. I've enjoyed our conversation with all of my heart, and I'm really looking forward to talking soon and to seeing more of you.
Absolutely. My pleasure. What a joy. Thank you so much for having me.